Our first house I lived in was my grandmother's old house. It was about it was on 32nd West and about 3900 South. And I lived there till I was about 3. And then we went to my great-grandfather's home, which was just down the street, a couple of houses, and I lived there till I was 8. And then when we were 8, my dad built the house up on 4700 South. We lived on the first house when I was just a little guy. The house was, there was a farmyard all around it, and so Mother would, I was kind of like Jake, I guess. I was into everything and disappears. And so to keep track of me, she had a little harness made that she buckle me into, and had a kind of a leash on it, and she'd snap it to the clothesline, and I could, when I was 2 or 3 years old, I could go the length of the clothesline, and that was it. So she could do her work without having to worry about me. And but then when we moved down to my great-grandfather's house, he had a dairy there, and they had 25 or 30 cows there all the time. They milked morning and night, and I would go out when they started milking in the evening, and my cousin George Robinson, he was about 16, 17, and he was a great reader. He read all kinds of books, and that he'd tell me stories, and that's where I got interested in reading. I'd go out there. Mother would come out about 7 o'clock and drag me in every night to go to bed, but it was a fun time for me. Had this big barn, and George tied a big big hayloft up in the top of the barn. It was a huge barn, and on one of the rafters he tied a big rope, and so we could get up on the side of the barn, inside of it, let loose hang onto the rope, and we could swing like Tarzan all the way across the barn, and my grandfather was still alive. He died, however, when we first got, a year or two after we got there. He was 94. Hemingway, my great-grandfather. And he was killed by the bull. They had a bull in the dairy herd, and the bull swung his head, and he was a frail, 94 years old, and it did something to him, and he died. He got something wrong with the inside of him, I think. And then we moved up on 4700 South. It was 3500 West about. Dad, my grandfather Harmon had 50 acres up there, and my dad bought 20 acres of it, and my Uncle Bruce bought 20 acres, and my Aunt Marge bought 10 acres. And so we were all side by side there on the same street. But that little farm was a lifesaver, because this was during the Depression. I was born in 28, and the Depression came. The stock market crash was in 29, and the Depression was in the whole 30s. And so I was 8 years old when we moved up there, so it would be 1936. And when I was a kid, my job on the farm was taking care of the vegetable garden. It was about an acre. And when it was our turn to water, I had to make sure that the garden got watered, and I spent the summer weeding, and because they really depended on that little garden. Mother would she'd dry the corn, and they would be hanging on the clothesline with a clothespin in a bag. It was a salt. They used to save all their salt bags and sugar bags. They came in cloth bags, and she'd save those, and we'd use them. And the big flour used to come in cloth bags, and so they would save those, and that would become dish towels. And we'd put the corn in the little bag, hang them on the clothesline for a couple of weeks, and we'd go have to fluff them up every day to keep them, the air circulated around so they'd dry good. And we had a chicken coop, had about 50 or 60 chickens, and we'd gather the eggs every day, and they would be, half the chickens would lay eggs, and the other half roosters, and the roosters would go in a pot on Sunday, and we just had our own eggs, and had half a dozen pigs, a couple of cows, a couple of horses. And when I got to be about 12, my dad started me milking the cows, so I had to get up in the morning and milk 2 cows, and at night I'd have to milk 2 cows, those same 2 cows. I got to hate those dang cows. And one time the cow had been out in the pasture, and he came in and had burrs stuck in its tail, and I was milking along, and a fly or something was stinging it, and it swung its tail around to get the fly off of his back, and the burr tail hit me right in the face. And I was mad because I had to milk the cow anyway, and I got up and gave it a kick in the stomach, and sat back down and got ready to milk again, and all of a sudden I flew off that stool. My dad come in and booted me off that stool. He gave me a swift kick in the rump, and I went skidding across the barn floor, and he looked at me and says, "That didn't feel good, did it?" He walked out. I never kicked a cow again. We lived in the house is still standing there. We just lived in the basement. We just had a basement house. In those days, if you didn't have money to build the whole house, you build a basement. You could build a basement for $1,000, where it took $3,000 or $4,000 to build the house at that time. And so they just put a roof over the top of the basement, and you'd go down the stairs into your house, and it was a little 2-bedroom place. My mother and dad got 1 bedroom. My 4 sisters got the other bedroom, and I lived on my bed was a little fold-up bed that went into a closet every morning and out every night. And I never did have a room of my own, And in the summertime, I slept outside every night. We had there was no central heating in the house. We had a coal stove in the front room that heated the front room, and everything you wanted to have hot water for, you had to heat on the stove. And then she put a big tub on 2 chairs in front of the stove and poured the water in, and there was enough. She had enough in the double boiler so that she'd warm up, put a little more water, hot water in for each kid when they got in, and four of the girls would go through it before me, and then I got in at last. I could hardly wait till I got in junior high so we could have a shower in the gym. I used to hate to have to walk out in the wintertime in the snow to take my little sisters out to the John, which is about 50 yards out in the field, and they were scared to go in the dark, and so I had to walk out with them, and I'd have to stand outside while they were inside the toilet, and I was hollering out, "Come on, hurry up, hurry up." And I used to build model airplanes when I was young. And my little sister did crush them. But it wasn't a bad life. Pretty good. We learned how to work.